Those eyes, disguise, I'll hide. Bright lights, decide, defy. Your heart beats fast, despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything, anything with you, with you. I just wanna feel anything, anything with you, with you.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast, where we are clean and serene with the filthy mind in between. My name is Matthew M. I am your host, and I am also an addict in recovery. Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast. Super excited. We are here for episode 22, y'all. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful, blessed week. I know I did. I had a great week. We're going to get all into that later on in this episode. We're going to be talking about tradition number 10. We're going to be talking about my favorite moments of the week. We're going to be answering more questions and, of course, giving them clean time shout-outs. Before we go any further, I got to say what's up and thank you so much to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. If you are looking for any event staffing or party staffing, or you're just looking for a job, make sure to head over to her website. It is listed in the description below. They're always hiring, and they're a great place to work. Also have to give a huge thank you to our episode theme music, Anything, by Valentino Khan and Alice in Wonderland. Shout out to Mad Decent Records for giving us the privilege of using that song as our theme music. All the information to stream and download is listed below. Also got to say what up, y'all, to our VIP supporters. These are the people on Patreon who are helping support this podcast with donations. They, as I always say, the help that we get on Patreon is amazingly helpful, and it goes directly back into our product. So if you would like to help support this product, the easiest way is through Patreon. You can get to our Patreon page by simply going to our website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. In the top right corner is our Patreon link. Head on over there, get signed up, make a donation to the podcast, and you will receive one of these amazing Clean and Filthy podcast stickers to brand wherever you like. Plus, you will get a shout out on air like these wonderful people. And our VIP supporters for the Clean and Filthy podcast are Alex B., Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Liana, Clint, and Alex T. Thank you all so much. Your support goes right back into this product and able to further our product and hopefully get our message out to even more people. So thank you, thank you, thank you all. Gotta say what's up to anybody and everybody who's watching right now on the live stream. For those who don't know, we broadcast live on youtube.com every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time. It's fun. We get a group of people going in the live chat. I always love being able to go back and read the comments that come in during the episode. So if you're interested in participating in that live stream, make sure to head on over to our YouTube channel so you can get subscribed and get a notification whenever we go live. Again, head over to the website and click on all the social medias. Like us, friend us, retweet us, whatever. Just get connected to the podcast so you can know when things are popping off. So if you're on YouTube right now, what up, chat? Make sure to like this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you really want to help us out, please make sure to download this episode wherever you consume your podcast from. We are listed on every podcast directory. And while you're there, maybe throw us a rating. All of those things really help us grow. The more we grow, the more people we can help. So what up to everybody on the live stream? If you aren't listening on a live stream and you're listening on a podcast directory, something you like, as I said, we are the Clean and Filthy Podcast. We do live streams every single Tuesday, 5 p.m. with episodes available for download later on that night. Anywhere you get your podcast, we're listed on all of them. So if you're there right now, thank you for the support. Thank you for the download. Hopefully you hear something you like and continue downloading this podcast. Before we go any further, I want to make sure to discuss what we are, what we aren't, what we do, and what we don't do. And before we even get into that, I want to update that we are still having some technical difficulties with the website. So if you usually watch the episodes or listen to the episodes directly off of our website, we're still having some issues with our hosting with GoDaddy. It's things that are occurring are above my pay grade, so I'm in the process of trying to get that all figured out. Hopefully by next week, all of the episodes will be current on there. But if you do usually listen to us on the website and you aren't able to currently, I put links on all of our social media with that information. So hopefully you'll be able to get that information from there. Second thing I want to point out, I don't know why, but all day I have been having internet connectivity issues. It says I'm connected to the internet, and then for whatever reason, it just glitches out. So if by chance this live stream cuts out or it gets a little choppy, I will be re-uploading it just to make sure that everybody can get the full experience. And you can always check it out on any podcast directory as well. I just want to put that out there because I'm looking in my OBS software right now, and my light that tells me that my green light that's telling me that my connection is good just went to yellow and then popped onto red. So I might be doing some like vibe in the live stream right now. And if I am, I'm sorry. Not on me, but I'm sorry. So now let's get into what we do, what we don't do before we get into our first segment of the week. Again, my name is Matthew M. I am an addict in recovery, and this is the Clean and Filthy Podcast. We are a weekly podcast, again, that do live episodes with episodes for download wherever you get your podcasts later on that day. We are a 12-step fellowship-based podcast. So we talk about the 12 steps, the 12 traditions. We talk about what us addicts in recovery go through on a daily basis. But I want to make sure to stay in line with the traditions, so I will not be endorsing or disclosing what my fellowship of choice is. I will not be speaking about any specific fellowship or any specific home group or any specific treatment center or recovery residence / sober living or giving recommendations from that perspective, because I want to make sure that I stay in line with the traditions. And I also want to make sure that we continue to embrace this concept of unity within this podcast. So if you have questions about specific things relating to those topics that we are not going to be covering on air, please do not hesitate to reach out to me directly. You can email me at matthew@cleanandfilthypodcast.com or contact with me directly on any of the social media links that are listed on the website, or just hit me up through the website directly. There are so many ways to have questions answered. Just hit me up. So I want to make sure that that's clear, because I don't want to violate any tradition. I don't want to endorse, my fellowship and say it's the only way. We're actually going to talk about this a little bit in today's first segment. But I want to make sure that everybody's clear on what we do. So if you are an addict in recovery, welcome. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. If you're not an addict in recovery, welcome. Hopefully you hear something you like and come back, or share this, because share. Please share. That's what we really need for this podcast to grow. As I say, we are an independent podcast. And when I say we, I mean myself and my Groot doll. If you aren't watching on the live stream, I have my ever handy and trusty baby Groot hanging here with me. That is the podcast. We don't have a producer. We don't have a contract with a major sponsorship deal, nothing like that. So we are trying to grow organically. And thanks to you guys out there, we are doing that. We are almost to our next download milestone, which is quadruple digits, y'all. Like, what? If you're telling me that in 5.5 months, we would be looking at almost 1,000 downloads? Like, for real, y'all are the real MVPs. Every one of you out there who's downloading this podcast, who's sharing this podcast, who's providing feedback, both positive and constructive criticism, I appreciate it all. Thank you so much. So again, we talk about the 12-step fellowship here. We don't talk about one specific fellowship just to make sure we stay in line with the tradition. So that's what we do. I also want to make sure to point out that this does not replace calling your sponsor or going to a meeting or doing step work or tradition work or being of service. This podcast is simply here to help create and cultivate a community of addicts, of non-addicts, of normies, of people that are just trying to get more information about recovery, because there's a lot of misinformation or disinformation or however you want to call it in the world regarding the disease of addiction. And the aim of this podcast is to develop a safe place for addicts and non-addicts alike to be able to ask questions, to get information, to get some clarity on different topics and understand what addicts in recovery go through on a daily basis. So that is what we're here to do. But it's not going to replace any of those other things of your recovery program. Hopefully, this is just an added bonus to your recovery journey. That is the goal. With that being said, again, thank you everybody who is here hanging out with us on the live stream or who downloads us after the fact. I love each and every one of you, even if I don't know you, even if I'll never meet you. I love you and thank you for being part of my journey. And damn, this has been a fun journey. So, first segment of our show. Let's get up into it here.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D. Recovery and development.
That's right, y'all. We are in the lab for our first segment of the week entitled R&D, Recovery and Development. This is the part of the show where we discuss a different step, tradition, or spiritual principle or concept from the 12-step recovery model. We give more info about it. We give some basics. We go a little bit deeper into it. We talk about how us addicts in recovery implement these things into our daily lives. Again, this is a lot of experience, strength, and hope. This is a lot of 12-step recovery meat right here. So if you're not an addict, you might be like, but bruh, I'm just here because you spammed me on Twitter. Why does this matter to me? Well, stick around, because the beautiful thing about 12-step recovery is that it can be applied in so many different areas of our lives, not just for us addicts in recovery. There are things within the steps and the traditions and the spiritual principles that anybody can benefit from, that anybody can grow from. And like I always say, the most beautiful thing to me about recovery is being able to grow as a human being. And the way that we do that is by working steps and traditions and implementing the spiritual principles within those in our lives. So if you're here right now, stick around. You might hear something you like. And if you do, please make sure to share it. So we're getting into tradition number 10. We're almost done with the traditions, y'all. This shit cray. Ain't it, Jay? Yeah. What she order? Fish fillet? Cray. Shit is cray. I don't know how this has happened. I know it's only happened because of y'all and my loving and caring higher power, and I thank all of that. But what was tradition 10? So as we talk about, I fucked up the numbering. Sorry. Episodes 1 through 12 line up with the steps 1 through 12. And as we say, step work, that's very intro to recovery. That's the first step, if you will, in recovery. But tradition work, that's that next level, on a new level. Now I've got that, thanks to the G.I. Joe trailer for Snake Eyes, now I have that song stuck in my head again. Thanks, guys. Just when I thought I could escape future, it's back. I digress. So we are into the traditions. We are on tradition 10. If you have not listened to the other episodes regarding the traditions, I highly recommend that you go and check them out because the traditions really do build on each other. And now we are on tradition 10. Absolutely crazy. So, as I've said before, I want to make sure that I stay in line with the traditions. So, while the traditions do list the name of the fellowship in them, you will be hearing a in place of that specific fellowship name. So do not be alarmed. It is supposed to be there. What does tradition say? Let's get right into it, y'all. Tradition 10 says, Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the name ought never be drawn into public controversy. This tradition makes a lot more sense to me than the last few have. We've discussed last week, tradition 9 was kind of wonky donkey, was like, what? This one, I get it. It makes sense. I'm going to start it off right with a quote from the literature. It says, our recovery speaks for itself. Our 10th tradition specifically helps protect our reputation. Direct ties right off the top to tradition 6. Because tradition 6 reminds us that the fellowship does not endorse, where tradition 10 makes sure that we aren't associating with any outside, issues. Got to look before we even go further into what the spiritual principles of this tradition are. And as we talk about, once you get into the traditions, they have so many spiritual principles that line up with them. These are just the spiritual principles that jump out at me personally when thinking about and implementing tradition 10 in my recovery. And they are patience, anonymity, tolerance, acceptance, unity, that's a big one, integrity, simplicity, and humility. So like I said, compared to past traditions, this tradition makes a lot more sense to me. I right off the top, without reading anything more, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I vibe with that. It says in the literature that clarity and simplicity are keys to our message. Tradition 10 is clear and simple as well. So true.
That part.
Let's look at what an outside issue is first, because we got to kind of look at that before we go anything deeper to really, kind of define that aspect first. So what is an outside issue? An outside issue is any issue that is not based on our program of recovery. It's any issue that does not further our primary purpose. And again, what is our primary purpose? To carry the message. And again, what is our message? Is that an addict, any addict, can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. It says in the literature that aside from our primary purpose, the fellowship has no opinions whatsoever. None. No opinions. So we don't have opinions on politics, cultural differences, hot button issues, controversies, the pandemic, religion, immigration, gun control, women's health, pro-life, pro-choice, none of that shit. So pretty much everything that you see motherfuckers arguing about until they're blue in the face on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, the fellowship does not have an opinion on that. Period. And we're going to discuss why. It says in the literature that engaging in debate with those who approach differs from ours or with those who criticize our program would distract us from our primary purpose and risk alienating the newcomer. And that's so true. If we're alienating a newcomer, we are not fulfilling our primary purpose. We are not carrying the message to the addict who's still sick and suffering. Period. But we have to look at the fact that while we're all individual members and we all have opinions on various amounts of topics, there's a difference between our personal opinion and the fellowship opinion. It says in the literature that Tradition 10 asks us to be vigilant in ensuring that our personal beliefs aren't mistaken for principles of the fellowship. Because everybody has a principle. I mean, everybody has an opinion. Like, everybody has an opinion. but we try to limit those opinions inside our meetings. It says in the literature that as members, we do have opinions on outside issues, and each of us has a right to our opinions. Although a recovery meeting is usually not the best place to discuss them. When we share our experience, strength, and hope, not our opinions and advice. And that's why a lot of meetings will say, please don't crosstalk. Don't direct your share to a specific member of the group, because that can be done after the meeting. That's not the primary purpose. We want to build that unity of that common purpose, that common goal is what allows the fellowship to thrive, is what allows tens of thousands of addicts to hear this life-changing, life-saving message. It's not about the opinions. The opinions often lead to disunity, which is what we don't want. Again, because regardless of what our outside opinions are, or what our opinion on outside issues are, when we are inside that meeting, that common goal is attractive. That common goal is reflective amongst our members, and newcomers see that and they're like, whoa. One of the craziest things that can happen is when we're sitting in a meeting and somebody who has completely antithetical perspectives to me on pretty much every issue can carry the message in the same way as somebody who's, again, the exact opposite. And that common goal it allows the opportunity for that message to not be diverted. That's when we talk about focusing on the message and not the mess. And there are times in our lives that we live in the mess. Me personally. But we always try to tie it into a meeting topic or a spiritual principle. Always try to pull the hope out of it. And sometimes that could be a struggle, which we'll talk about a little bit further. It says in the literature, it says, we don't all know how to share a recovery message when we get here, meaning to the rooms of the fellowship. And that was definitely my story. When I first got clean, there were a lot of things that were going on in my personal life. I was going through some things, and I was feeling some feelings that I didn't know how to identify, or I didn't want to identify. And I didn't know how to speak the message. All I knew, I was a messy motherfucker in active addiction. I was a messy motherfucker prior to active addiction in a lot of ways. I only knew mess. I knew grimy, dirty, filthy, yucky type of mess. I didn't know hope, positivity, message. Fuck is that? I know about my shit. And that's what I sat in. And it wasn't until an experienced member came to me after a meeting and said some things that we're going to mention a little bit further here that really helped my perspective shift and start to realize that finding the message is the most important thing. Carrying the message is the most important thing. But if I can even find that message within the mess, that at least brings it back around. And when we focus on the message, we can much more easily hear the message. It's a weird thing that, like, as human beings, we often will gravitate towards and I don't want to say vibe with, because that has like a positive connotation, but we identify in a lot of ways with our surroundings. So if we go into a meeting that is nothing but everybody sitting in their own shit, nobody looking for solutions, only talking about the problem, it's a lot easier to find the problems. But if we can focus on hearing that message and carrying that message, we can find the unity. We can find the similarities, not the differences, which we've talked about before was one of my biggest struggles when I first got into recovery. I could find every single reason why we were different. I could find every single reason why I wasn't as bad as you, or you weren't as bad as me, or we didn't use the same substances, because I didn't want to see the unity. But looking back on it now, that unity is one of the most important things that ever occurred in my recovery. And having that change from finding those differences to finding those similarities is why the fellowship works. But this can be difficult at times, especially with the current world conditions, the political conditions, the pandemic conditions, the difficulties that we are having around the world from religion and race and equality. And there are constant things. Plus, when you add in the social media element, it seems that every topic, everybody has an opinion about these days. Might not be informed, but everybody has an opinion. And shit, they can spit that out on Twitter. They can share about it on Facebook. And that's the world that we're living in right now. And those topics can affect our personal recovery. Those outside issues can affect our personal recovery. It says in the literature, it says, while a particular problem may be an outside issue, its effect on our recovery is not an outside issue. Everything affecting a recovering addict's life is material for sharing. So this can get difficult, where we're wanting to try and keep outside issues outside of the meeting, but if it's affecting our personal recovery, sharing about it is what we're supposed to do. So a lot of times it comes down to sharing in a balanced way. It says in the literature, it says we may need to share what's going on, but we try to stay focused. And finding that focus when sharing takes time. It's different for different people, especially with so many different political or just life on life's terms shit that's popping up lately. With how emotionally charged everybody is about every topic. So for some people who maybe were always able to carry the message and keep outside issues outside, now certain topics are really affecting them personally, and they no longer have that ability. And that's okay. Progress, not perfection. It says in the literature that these skills, being able to carry that message and differentiate outside issues from your shares takes time. And these skills we develop over time and with some help. The ability to share clearly, even when we are passionate about something, is a message in itself. It's like finding a balance between honestly sharing and what is happening in our lives and trying to think about what those consequences could be. That can be difficult. But it says in the literature, it says if a problem we are having impacts our ability to stay clean and grow spiritually, it's not an outside issue. So then there has to be this level of intent that's looked at. What is my intent if I'm sharing about an outside issue? Am I sharing about an outside issue because it's affecting my recovery? Or am I sharing about that because I want to further an opinion? Am I sharing about it because I feel feelings that I don't know how to properly identify them, so I throw them in with anger, and the best way for me to release that anger is to just word vomit on a meeting? We have to look at the intent. It says in the literature, it says, am I sharing from my experience or am I expounding on an opinion? As an individual, am I dwelling in the problem or seeking the solution? And I'll admit, there are times that I don't want the solution, especially early on in recovery. Just the desire is just, I want to sit in my shit, so that's what I'm going to do. Meh. But as we grow spiritually, as we develop more time and understanding and spirituality and experience, strength and hope, sitting in our shit does not feel as nice as it did when we first got here. I can speak to that from personal experience, strength, and hope. But when we're sharing, we also need to think about the potential negative consequences. When we bring outside issues into a meeting, we have to be cognizant of the things that could happen from that. You know, let's say I'm going through some legal trouble and I go into a meeting and I start talking about like, fuck cops, A.C.A.F, all cops are bastards. And a member is sitting there, a newcomer is sitting there whose dad is a cop. What's my share going to do to impact that addict who's trying to hear a life-saving message? That's a problem. I know personally of one of my friends from the fellowship who, because of something that was shared in a meeting about politics, does not feel comfortable or safe going to that meeting or even to the fellowship. And that's a fucking problem. That is a problem. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of this, because there are plenty of times that I have shared things that, looking back on it, I shouldn't have. It was an outside issue that potentially could have detrimental consequences. And if we're doing anything at all, that isn't furthering our primary purpose, that is in fact doing the opposite of it, that's a fucking problem.
That part.
For the record, I'm probably going to say fuck a lot today because I watched this awesome video about how amazing the word fuck truly is. And it really fucking opened up my eyes about a lot of fucking things. So I fucks with it. Fuck is such a great word. I digress. But even when we're sharing about things that might be a positive, that's an outside issue. That can still have detrimental consequences. If I'm sharing about what my God is, what my higher power is, and I speak it to a specific name of a religious dogmatic God, that in itself could be disunifying. If an entire room of people is speaking about one specific type of God and my God is a different God, that might make me not want to go back to that meeting. That might make me believe that this fellowship is this religion type of thing. And that is a problem. So even outside issues that very well could be a positive. It isn't a negative thing. It isn't a, fuck this politician. It isn't the pandemic's a hoax. It isn't something like that that's even a controversial topic. But when we bring outside issues inside the rooms, they might have consequences far beyond what we even think about. And we're going to talk about that a little bit further down as to how the group can kind of, work together with that. And this doesn't mean that we don't honestly share our experience with things, but being mindful of the ramifications of what we're sharing is the responsibility of each member. And again, that's why I say traditions are next level type of stuff, because when I first got into the rooms, I wasn't thinking about this shit. With the Matthew M, before I was even triple extra, with 65 days, what the fuck's an outside issue? It's shit that's going on in my newcomer brain. This is an issue. So as we grow in recovery and as we develop more in recovery, we are able to identify things that are outside issues that maybe don't serve the purpose of carrying the message. And then we can find out ways and means to deal with those things. It says in the literature, we carefully consider the effects our words and actions may have on the fellowship we love and the message we carry. We learn to speak wisely and to understand the power of silence.
That part, that part, that part, that part.
That last shit, the power of silence, that shit. Oof. That shit right there? Yeah. That is so important in my life, especially over the last year and 6 months, really the last 4 years. And I will admit, this is something I'm sometimes not the best at. And sometimes I feel the need to talk about something, especially when I'm passionate about it, especially when I have a different perspective on it. We've talked about the character defect of control, the character defect of feeling that I know everything and needing to tell somebody why they're wrong. But that's not what we're here to do. You know, when I'm in a meeting, that's not what I'm here to do. If that's what I choose to do on social media or after a meeting, that's one thing. And that, again, is if I choose to do that, which, again, that power of silence, whoo, that has helped this addict's life immensely. But not feeling the need to speak on something simply because I have a different opinion is so important. And because my opinion or that person's opinion does not change my primary purpose. The primary purpose is to carry the message we spoke about earlier above. Whatever my outside opinions on outside issues are, does not fucking matter to carrying that message, to that primary purpose. But we have to talk a little bit about social media. And we're going to talk about this even more next week with Tradition 11. But we have to talk about this element of it and how that can bring in outside issues to recovery type of stuff. Because all of us are on social media, you know, and we all give opinions on social media and in life. And even just things, maybe not social media, but when we are putting an opinion out there, or we have a cause, and there's any way that can get misconstrued as the, you know, perspective or the cause of the fellowship, that is a problem. Having a fellowship sticker on the back of your car next to a fuck Biden or fuck Trump bumper sticker, that very possibly looks like that fellowship has an opinion on that outside issue. Those are things we have to be cognizant of. When certain members will post things on social media, people who are known for their time in recovery, for their positions on the region board or the area board or whatever, very easily this can become a problem. And it can almost look like this is the opinion of that fellowship. It says in the literature that the challenge is keeping the fellowship message separate from the other messages we may carry. I personally know of people who will not go to certain meetings that certain people are at or chairing because of what that person had posted on social media. It says in the literature, it says that we practice honesty and discretion. We focus on the purpose at hand and are not diverted by side topics or invitations to argument. We let go of our investment in other people's opinions. One member commented, I love this, I practice this tradition by remembering that your thoughts and opinions are outside issues to me. Period. If that comment that person made on social media happened inside of a meeting, that's a lot different than if it happens on social media. But regardless, we all have the opportunity to simply avoid that. I personally made that choice. I personally unfollowed on Facebook one of my sponsees because at the end of the day, I didn't need that. His opinion is not my opinion, and I don't need to put the energy or time or effort into that on outside issues. He's my sponsee because we work together and do step work and tradition work together. It doesn't have to be more than that. I don't need to get into the opinions of things that are outside issues. That's not the point. So we also have to look at it, though, from a group perspective. Because, the traditions really do tie in to the groups more so, I would say, than the individual members. And it says in the literature that groups are the front line for our primary purpose. It is so important that we have an atmosphere of recovery within the fellowship, whatever fellowship it is. And that having that safety, having that atmosphere of recovery is one of the most vital things that a home group can work towards. And then protecting it once it's been developed. Protecting it is usually a lot easier than initially developing at times. And this is especially true in my home group. Because my home group is frequented by a lot of treatment centers and a lot of newcomers. And there is a lot of mess that occurs. And outside issues are often brought up by, as I said before, people like myself early in recovery. We don't know what the message is. What do we know about? Mess. Motherfucking mess. Let's go. So it's important for experienced members of that home group to try and refocus. One of the worst things I have ever witnessed in a 12-step recovery fellowship meeting was when somebody who had a good amount of time shared a super duper outside issue share. And immediately next, another person with 20 plus years clean directly responded to that share. Like, that was one of the most cringy AF moments I have experienced in my recovery, because that is blatantly opposed to what we do. How is that carrying the fucking message to the addict who still suffers? Nah, bro, that is speaking opinion. That is speaking opinion and dividing. That's destroying the unity rather than contributing to it. That's not what we're here trying to do, period. It says in the literature, it says, our automatic response may be to want to debate or correct, but it is so much more powerful when we simply bring the sharing back around to what is important in the fellowship and keep it there. And this is our responsibility as home group members, as members of the fellowship. We help carry the message and not add to the mess. There's already enough mess in the world. Why do I need to try to add to it? And, you know, it says in the literature, it says, as a group, it's our job to be tolerant, listen well, hear the message through the mess, and encourage newer members to grow. And this is exactly what was done to me early on in my recovery. Early on in my recovery, when I'm sitting there just loving the mess, messy AF, I am all about the mess. And somebody came up to me and said, do you want to see the solution? Didn't tell me what the solution was. Didn't force me to see it. Asked me, did I want to see the solution? And for certain topics at that time, I didn't. But as it says in our literature, when the pain gets great enough, then we'll change. And eventually, the pain got great enough on certain topics. And therefore, I had the desire to seek out that solution, not live in the problem, not live in the mess. And again, that occurred after the meeting. I didn't share on some shit and then homie immediately shared afterwards like, you need to stop. Nah, it happened after the meeting. And this is so important to keep outside issues outside and to not align a fellowship with a specific cause or purpose or religion or political party or hot button topic. Because there have been many examples of other fellowships or offshoots of fellowships and groups in general that fell apart because of outside issues. Again, that's why we protect the atmosphere of recovery so much. Because if we don't, the life-saving program that saved my life and numerous other people's lives, countless other people's lives, is in jeopardy. And that's a terrifying thing. Allowing anything get in the middle of the primary purpose, allowing anything to divert the message has potentially fatal consequences. And I know to maybe non-addicts out there, they're like, wow, this motherfucker's dramatic as shit. Talking about people gonna die. But people could die. People do die from the disease of addiction. And any amount of disunity, any amount of divergence from the message could contribute to that. Addicts truly die if the atmosphere of recovery isn't protected, if we aren't focusing on our primary purpose. If somebody never comes back to a meeting because of an outside issue that was mentioned and they continue using and they die, that right there is an example of that happening. It's not dramatic. It's not over the top. Even though I am over the top as fuck, we all know that. That statement is not. I'm going to close with this quote. I like this quote a lot. I'm going to close with this quote. It says, as a fellowship, we agree to take positions only on those ideas that have drawn us together, our principles of recovery, not on the many personal opinions that might divide us. As we talked about earlier, only thing the fellowship has an opinion on is the program. That's it. All the other shit outside of that is trivial. All the other shit outside of that is a distraction to the primary purpose. It's a distraction to that life-saving message. So we got to keep that shit out. God is done. Because it can be so difficult to the overall unity and hope of the fellowship. And again, as I said, it's not always easy to do, especially when you have a political climate and a pandemic and racial inequality and rampant sexism. I mean, there's so many things. It takes effort from everyone. It takes effort from all the members to work together for this common goal. And it takes effort to keep those outside issues outside so that common goal can be focused on. So that's what we have for today's first segment of recovery and development. Come back next week. Next week's episode is on Tradition 11, which is a lot of fun. We reference this tradition literally every single episode of this podcast. So it's going to be interesting to dive a little bit deeper, to explore it a little bit deeper. Phrasing. It's going to be a good vibe. So make sure to come back next week and we will talk about that. But now it is time for our second segment, entitled My Favorite Moment of the Week. Still no Bang sponsorship, so we still do a free ad read for them. The Clean and Filthy podcast is a large proponent of Bang Energy Drink with 300 milligrams of coffee, Ultra CoQ10, Super Creatine, and EAA aminos. Get clean and filthy with Bang Energy. Brought to you by Bang Energy. Again, setting those Bang tensions hopefully leads to manifestations of Bang results. That part.
That part, that part, that part, that part.
All right, we are back. Second segment of the week. It's called My Favorite Moment of the Week. This is the time of the show where we talk about something that has occurred over the last week. It might be from pop culture, news, sports, social media, Instagram, TikTok. Still not on TikTok. I can't front though. The line is getting, it's getting, I can see it on the horizon. I don't want to be on TikTok. Somebody help me. Don't let me get on TikTok. Just for today. This is just part of the show where we talk about something fun. This is not about recovery. Yeah, I still might bring in a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope, but that's not the point of this part of the show. This is just fun because I like talking about fun stuff that's happened. Part of the reason I'm in recovery is because my life is fun. Recovery is fun, hence why I continue in recovery. One of the reasons. So, of course, we can't just have one moment. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of moments. First, we got to talk about the NBA Finals. This is the moment that half of my viewers just officially go on mute. Sorry, but there's no fucking way we ain't talking about the NBA Finals because the Suns are in them. Let's go. As we talked about last week, I had my beautiful lucky outfit on last week's episode. If you notice, this week's episode is also going to tie into my favorite moment of the week. So if you're on YouTube right now, you're getting a little like sneak peek teaser as to what's coming. Ooh, what's coming? Last week, had my Suns outfit on. Suns won game 1. Literally, 5 minutes before the game, Yanni Vowles goes from being doubtful to now starting. And he actually looked pretty decent at 20 points, 17 rebounds in like 35 minutes. Middleton dropped like almost 30. But DeAndre Ayton, woo! 22 points, 19 rebounds. Book dropping 27 points, 6 assists. CP3 dropping 32 with 9 dimes and 4 ribbies. Sadly, Dario Saric, ACL snap. He gone. It's going to be interesting. Bringing in more Kaminsky. Fun fact, the Suns shot 25 for 26 from the free throw line. And Jay Crowder got fouled with 1 minute left and missed one of them, or else we would have gone 26 for 26, all-time record. Instead, 25 for 26, still pretty cool. Suns win, 118-105. Amazing way to start the series. Game 2, Yanni Vowles went straight up beast mode. 42 points, 12 rebounds. But thankfully, good old Chris Middleton did a disappearing act. Only ended up with 11 points. He was mad passive, kind of like Booker was in Game 3, which we'll get to in a second. I'm very glad he didn't show up, because even with Bridges dropping 27 and Booker dropping 31 and Paul dropping 23, we had more turnovers. The Bucks out-rebounded us, doubled us up in points in the paint. Ayton only had 10 points, which there was a clip of Monty Williams coaching him up. That was amazing. If you haven't seen it, go to the NBA Twitter page or on Instagram. Amazing moment. But we shot 50% from 3-pointers and won 118-108. Game 3 on Sunday. Oof. Ugly game. Giannis was unstoppable, like flat out. He was unstoppable. Plus, it didn't help that DeAndre Ayton was in foul trouble, and Yanni just went nuts. 41 points, 13 boards, back-to-back 40 and 10 games. The caliber of people who've ever done that was like Kareem and Shaq, or maybe Wilt Chamberlain. I don't remember. It was something ridiculous, like all-time greatest of great players. Not only that, but both Holiday and Middleton showed up. Booker did not. Oh, Devin only ended up with 10 points, had extended time on the bench. Some days you just don't got it. That was a day that he did not. But shout out to Jay Crowder, dropping 18 points, and his three-pointer was looking wet. Like every time he got the ball, it was like swish, swish. Also, shout out my boy Yehuda. He's the biggest Jay Crowder fan in the entire world. He fucking loves this guy. He actually hates him, but we're all going to join together to work on him so that he's going to start liking Jay Crowder. That's what we're doing here at the Clean and Filthy podcast. He's going to like him eventually. The Bucks out-rebounded us, out-assisted us, had more steals, more points in the paint, better three-point field goal, better free throw field goal percentage. Giannis actually out there making his free throws while Chris Paul and Booker are missing them. Plus, they had less turnovers and less fouls than us. And so many of our shots just weren't dropping. You know, there were so many of those shots that on any given night are going to go in, and they just rimmed out. They just didn't go through. And sometimes that's the game of basketball. Suns lose 120-110. 120-100. Really sucked because it was such a fun vibe. I ended up watching the game with a couple of my buddies, and we got fried chicken from this place called Gus's Chicken, which was absolutely fucking fire. But it was unfortunate. Loss, ugly game. But it's okay because my prediction of Suns in 5 is still on track, y'all. And tomorrow night, we're going to get the opportunity to stay on that track. That's what we do it here. We're good. Lucky Outfit will be on again tomorrow. My superstition is going to all new levels of manipulation and machination to still make this my lucky outfit, but I digress. That's all we got for the NBA Finals. So everybody who doesn't care about sports, welcome back. Come on back. Come on. Come on back. All right. Now we're back. All right. Next thing of my favorite moment of the week. Talk about the weekly fitness update. First part, fun number. I'm 215.4 pounds, which after Vegas's Trash Panda experience, I'm pretty happy with that. The side note of that, though, is I only worked out twice in the last 2 weeks. So how much of that weight loss is fat versus muscle? Because muscle weighs more than fat. I don't know, but I'm sure once I go back to the gym tomorrow and continuously, it's going to go back up. It's just been this difficult thing of even though I had a great push day, I put up 225 on incline without a spot on the incline bench. But I had my son last week, and during the pandemic, my time with him increased. And so during the pandemic, I would work out over at my mom's place. So he would just be there chilling. And now it's just bringing up different elements of like finding what schedule works for working out and being able to have somebody watch him, or, you know, timing and all that. It adds a lot of variables that this addict just hasn't figured out yet. So only worked out once last week. I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to go ham. It's going to be beautiful. One of my favorite things off of Instagram was the Vin Diesel family memes. I know some people got really sick of them really quickly. I thought they were funny as hell, because that was always one of the corniest things in the Fast and the Furious movies, which I haven't seen like the last 4 of, whatever. But I absolutely love those. I also had a really fun weekend of service. This past weekend, I was a part of 6 different service meetings in like a 24-hour period of time, which is cool. I'm officially the Phoenix area vice chair. Again, not trying to say that from an egotistical perspective, but I'm really excited about it. It's a new opportunity, and it's a new way to be of service, and it's something I haven't done before. So I'm pretty hype about that. You know, I'm pretty excited about that. We have to talk about the 5th episode of Loki real quick. I didn't think it was that great of an episode. I set up a lot for the season finale. I will say the alligator Loki made up for the President Loki letdown. They build this President Loki up for the whole marketing of it. Even my Marvel game had it in it, and then it just kind of was a letdown, whatever. But there were some great memes. There were some amazing memes about that. Thank you, Alex, for sending me all of those amazing memes and them TikToks. So Loki, we'll see what happens. Season finale tonight at midnight. Well, it's technically tomorrow at midnight. Whatever. So I will be watching that. We'll probably be talking about it next week. We got to talk about UFC 264. Supposed to be this huge trilogy fight between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, because Conor knocked him out in 2014, and Dustin knocked Conor out earlier this year. And after Conor started off decently, Dustin kind of took over. And with a minute left, Conor's leg straight snapped. Took a step backwards, and his tibia and fibula just went boop. We're not going to do this anymore. We're just done. We're done for the day. Conor claims that he misstepped. Dustin claims that he broke Conor's foot when Conor was throwing a kick and Dustin checked it. I tend to believe Dustin. After watching the replay, you could see the moment where after the kick is thrown, Dustin like points at it, and he's claiming that that's when he felt his leg snap, which if that was the case, that happened like in the first minute of the fight. For Conor to fight the rest of that round on one leg, it's pretty impressive. The moment of Joe Rogan interviewing Conor while he's sitting up against the cage, it was so ridiculous, man. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but we got to talk about the memes first, because the memes, oh my God, Twitter, Instagram, savagery. Absolutely destroyed, like burned Conor up, took his ashes together, poured some gasoline on it, and reburned it. Scorched him. It's lit. That part. From SpongeBob to Family Guy to a pirate with a peg leg to Monty Python to Captain America, even the one that used the Dexter, surprise, motherfucker, even that made an appearance, which anytime I get a meme that uses that surprise motherfucker in it, I am all in. That was probably the best part of Dexter, and it all went to shit after that, but I digress. But my favorite meme was a fight card saying that Dana White's going to milk this matchup as much as they can. Like, you're excited about Dustin Conor 4. How about, and it shows Dustin and Conor both like super aged, looking like 60, and it's like 33, the 33 rematch. That shit was funny. And I really used to like Conor. He had incredible skill, massive confidence. He was a double champ. He was the champ. He was a massive star, and he brought more attention and crossover potential to MMA. And I love MMA. And MMA will always be trying to fight out of its past, kind of like my actual favorite moment of the week. It's always going to be trying to distance itself and legitimize itself from its early days of literally anything goes. Eye gouge, punch him in the nuts, whatever. It's trying to legitimize itself. And I loved that it brought more attention to it. Part of the reason that that the UFC was sold to ESPN for $4 billion was 100% because of Conor McGregor. So I respect that. But his confidence has just turned to being annoyingly cocky, man. And I know that you got to sell fights. I understand this. This is a prize fighting game. I get that. But there is a line. And it's since the Mayweather fiasco, debacle, whatever the fuck you want to call that was, he's just been aligned up with this over the top, too far, too much, in my opinion. I think he's been doing the Vince McMahon Billy strut for a little too long, and he really feels that he's in the WWE and that he's a heel. I really think that's what he believes at this point. And like screaming about Dustin's wife being in his DMs while he's literally laying on the ground up against the cage, can't fucking stand. Like, bruh, that's too much. Like, lose with some class, bruh. Lose with some dignity. And I get in that moment, he's realizing, wow, this guy just won the trilogy fight. I better do something to keep the excitement going. But, like, there are ways to do that, and that was just too much. And I hope for Conor's speedy return because MMA is exciting with him in it. But hopefully for his fights and not his antics. Also, a funny thing that he said he was going to put Poirier on a stretcher, and instead, he was the one who got wheeled out on a stretcher. And, of course, Twitter let him know about that. Also got to give a shout-out from that same card to Sugar Sean O'Malley. He trains out at the lab in Glendale, Arizona. Actually was kind of friends with somebody that worked there and also knows somebody from way back in the day who's been training there for a while. It's a great jiu-jitsu academy, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Plus, they've got some really solid striking coaches. He's 14-1, really looking for that next moment. So super sick on that. Also, from the land of Instagram, I got to give a shout out and mention this because this was just amazing. Quentin Tarantino was on a podcast, and the host of that podcast asked him what he thought about Quentin Quarantino. And it was awesome. It was awesome. And Quentin Quarantino ended up posting it on Instagram. He's like, is this it? Is this the peak? Is this like the peak of my IG fame? Can it get better than this? Is this it? It's pretty funny. So those were all some fun moments. But my actual favorite moment of the week. Whew, I went to the movies for the first time in 18 months with two of my boys. Part of the hardcore recovery Marvel crew. And before we even get into that, I got to talk about, if you're from Arizona and you go downtown, go down to the Arizona Civic Center. Because goddamn, it's a ghost town. And this is my first, I'm just getting back out into the world post-pandemic, but this was one of the first times that I saw the effects of the pandemic. Because that place used to be popping. And now there's almost nothing left. So it was sad. It honestly was kind of sad. So I don't know if that was direct pandemic result. Maybe it was already failing prior to that, but it was kind of sad. But we were down there to see a movie, y'all. And we went and saw Black Widow. Woo! So background on this flick. It was supposed to come out prior to COVID. And it was delayed because of COVID. And then it was, well, maybe we'll release it. And then it got delayed again. And then it got delayed again. And this was supposed to be the kickoff for Phase 4. This was supposed to come out prior to the Disney Plus shows. But because of everything and how much money they could potentially lose, Marvel and Disney decided not to do that. So this is officially the first movie of Phase 4. And it had a $219 million opening weekend. They said that, Disney Plus offering it at $29.99 was a huge success. And that could very well be a way of the future, and that could be very big trouble for movie theaters around the world. It is starring Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff / Black Widow, Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, David Harbour as Alexei / the Red Guardian. Love him in Stranger Things so much. Rachel Weisz as Melina, and William Hurt back as Thunderbolt Ross. Spoiler warning! I will not be discussing spoilers from the Black Widow film. But everything up to this film is fair game. I'm sorry, y'all, but Endgame came out 18 months ago. If you ain't seen it yet, that's not on me. Just putting that out there. If you haven't seen it, you don't want to have Endgame spoiled for you, I suggest coming back in, I don't know, a few minutes. So, got to talk about Natasha Romanoff as a character. She's been in 8 MCU films, plus a mid-credit scene in Captain Marvel. One of the only female characters with staying power from the beginning of the MCU. And we're going to talk about how positive her portrayal has been. We'll get to that. Her character was never really that deeply explored beneath kind of a surface level. You know, there were passing comments about the Red Room. There were some elements. There was the little, mentioning of Budapest. There were always some background elements, and sometimes a little bit deeper, but not super duper in depth. I've always loved her character, along with Hawkeye, along with Tony Stark, because I've always vibed with the characters who didn't need, to be a god from Asgard, or to drink a special elixir, or to have some super duper magic or infinity stones, or be a mutant. I vibe with the people who are just really good at what they do, or have a lot of money to be really good at what they do. Shout out Tony Stark. I vibe with that. Incredible technical skill. That's sick to me. And overall, I really enjoyed the movie, y'all. I admit I went in with moderate expectations. I went in thinking, as long as it's better than Captain Marvel, I'm happy. And it well exceeded my expectations. And it could be the fact that that's the first movie I've seen in a movie theater since Endgame. It could be the fact that I was the added joy of being back in a movie with my boys in society. It could have. But there was a lot of importance about this movie that I really loved. Because it sucks that in 2021, we have to mention that having a female lead in a superhero movie is a big deal, but it still is a big deal. And I get a lot of people saying, it's too little, it's too late, should have happened 5 years ago. Yes, it should have happened 5 years ago. Yes, they should have done more for her character sooner. Yes, they should have tried to distance themselves from the past sexist, objectified perspective of comic books. Yes, I agree with those things. But life on life's terms and progress, not perfection, dictates that this is still a step forward. There was a predominantly female cast. Most of the characters in the movie that were actual characters, not faceless goons, faceless villains, were female. Predominantly women. There were 4 men, if you include Thunderbolt Ross, that really had continuous screen time. Other than that, it was all women. And they're women kicking ass. Not like, oh, dainty, they're to look sexy. Nah, fuck all that. These are badass women. Fucking dudes up. It very highly passed the Bechdel test. Very highly. Continuously through the movie passed the Bechdel test. So shout out for that. And even though there's so much talk about her always being the hot Avenger, Natasha Romanoff was the hot Avenger without substance. This film helped address that and, talk about that. It directly addressed some of the stereotypical female comic book moments in it. There was a comment about her stance and her hair flip that really showed how ridiculous comic books and comic book movies have always been. And I loved that about it. And even though some people are saying, well, it wasn't enough, there's 60 years of blatant sexism, blatant objectification, blatant over-sexualization in comic books that we are trying to undo. And is it going to be perfect? No. Could it have been done better? Yes. Should it have been done better from the beginning? Yes. Would it have been way better if back in Iron Man 2 when she was introduced, she wasn't just introduced as like the hot Avenger? There was actually more substance to her? Yes. That would have been amazing. Would it have been great to have explored more about her past without putting some kind of mishmash relationship with Bruce Banner into it? Sure. Yes, that would have been great. But we are continually progressing with where we started. We can't change that. The past is the past. Now we need to work within that and grow from that. And I really do think that this movie did a great job at that. And I feel that while I'm not excusing the past, I'm applauding the potential for the future. The fact that this movie was unlike any other Marvel movie, period. It was unlike that. And granted, there were still some moments that people will eviscerate and excoriate, and you're never going to please everybody. There's still always going to be something that somebody's like, that's this, or that's not enough, or that's too much. I get it. But every single thing isn't going to be perfect in every single level. That's just how it is. And what I appreciated about this is it felt much less forced than Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel to me was not a great overall movie. And it felt very forced of like Marvel sitting around like, we need to have a female lead superhero movie, so let's put her in there. And even though I understand why they did the timing with that, because it was necessary to develop Captain Marvel as a character for Endgame, I get that. But it just felt very forced. And it felt so much more organic. The movie, Black Widow as a movie, felt so much more organic than the lady superhero scene at the end of Endgame. Which, while that was an important moment, to have all these female superheroes on screen together, that felt so forced to me. That didn't feel organic. That didn't feel like a true build-up. It was just like, hey, let's put them all together. That'll be a great moment. And that to me felt forced. Whereas this movie allowed a natural progression, in my opinion, and helped further the narrative and changing the narrative that, women in comic books are the object of desire. They aren't capable. And granted, that hasn't always been. There have been exceptions to that rule. But it needs to continue more, and I really feel that this movie did that. Some of my favorite moments within it, again, I'm not going to spoiler alert, but some of my favorite moments were David Harbour as the Red Guardian. He was so arrogant and narcissistic and pompous, yet he was still endearing. And his stories about like fighting Captain America and asking, has Captain America said anything about me, were hilarious. Frances Pugh as Yelena, she's a badass. I loved her character. There was some of the best lines and the comic relief in the movie were thanks to her. Her whole thing about her vest, when you see it, you know what I'm talking about, was awesome. Plus, the time when she calls Red Guardian the Crimson Dynamo, that's a beautiful comic book reference nod that really was like, all right, I see what you did there. Well done. So very well done with that. Also, side note, all of these characters are in my Marvel game that I've talked about before, and I had no desire to up Red Guardian or Yelena because I didn't really care. And now that I've seen the movie, I'm upping them all. Love them, love them, love them. Also, there was a remake of Smells Like Teen Spirit for the intro. Some people really hate it, but I thought that it fit really well with the intro, so I thought that was cool. Also, not only the Budapest versus Budapest scene, but also getting to get that background on Budapest, which was mentioned back in Avengers 1. And has been this constant thing that they've hinted at about this massive amount of red in her ledger in that moment. And so that was really cool being able to discuss that. Also really liked how they went deeper into the fact that Black Widow isn't a character. Black Widow isn't Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff was a Black Widow. Just like T'Challa wasn't Black Panther, or Black Panther isn't T'Challa. T'Challa was a Black Panther. Or Captain America. Steve Rogers was a Captain America, but he isn't the only Captain America. I thought that was cool. Another divisive thing, I loved what they did with Taskmaster, personally. I'm not going to spoiler alert it, but it was totally not the comic book storyline at all. But I really liked what they did it and how they still brought the elements in of what Taskmaster's true superhero abilities are. Thought it was fire. And the after credits scene was very well done. I'm very curious if the delay hadn't happened, what the after credit scene would have been. Because the reason the after credit scene was fire was because of the Disney Plus series that have occurred prior to its release. So brought in some elements that'll be interesting. Really curious to see how that's going to play out. But I got to admit, man, there was some excitement, man, with sadness. You know, as happy as I was to have it come out, I will admit I was confused. I didn't know where it was going to fall in the timeline because, spoiler alert, but Natasha's fucking dead. She's fucking dead, y'all. And that shit still fucks me up. Literally, that was one of the main reasons why I haven't watched Endgame. One of the main reasons I cried like most ridiculous, ugly cry was because of her death. And I didn't know how this timeline was going to play in. I was hoping it wasn't going to be a true origin story because I don't really like origin stories, and I'm very happy that it wasn't. I'm very happy with the time that it took place in the MCU. I'm also happy that it ended up being more of a Yelena origin story than an actual Black Widow story. But I'm also sad because that very possibly is the last that we're ever going to see of Natasha in the MCU. And this has been 11 years of building this, relationship with this character in so many ways. And maybe it wasn't the most deep relationship at times, and maybe it was over-sexualized in times, and maybe it was underrated or undervalued in times, but it still was a great part of the MCU for 11 years, and now it's probably done. And I admit I cried. I cried a couple times in that. I can't make it through a Marvel movie anymore without crying, apparently. I couldn't even watch the 8-minute Marvel Legends part on Disney Plus, which I highly recommend watching prior to seeing Black Widow, especially if you haven't seen every single Marvel movie or you don't know them inside and out like some of us addicts do. I highly recommend that. In that 8-minute thing, I cried in the first 30 seconds, man. Because her death was so unexpected in Endgame. Tony, you knew it was happening. You knew it was happening. And it was sad. And I sobbed to that. But hers was so unexpected. And that fucked me up. I can't wait to see it again, honestly. I highly recommend it. I can't wait to see it again because I know I missed a bunch of Easter eggs in it. I know that there were things that I missed on that first time. I wouldn't say it is all-time top-tier Marvel like Captain America 2 Winter Soldier, but it had a very similar vibe to that. I would definitely say it is on that next tier. Way above the bottom tier. What's on the bottom tier? Iron Man 3, Thor 2, Captain Marvel. To me, the movies that didn't really do anything to my feels, but simply progressed the story further, those to me are bottom tier movies. If I don't connect with it, but it's like, okay, cool, we increase the character's story arc. Hooray. That's what I would say for that. I think it's a time. I think it's officially time with, phase 4 popping off. I think it's officially time to do another complete Marvel run. Since some of the movies, like Iron Man, might be holding unfair status on that list. It might be. So I think it might be time to do a run through of them. And who knows, maybe that'll be a segment on the show. So that's what we have for my favorite moments of the week. Go see Black Widow. I loved it. I thought it was really well done. I know I'm probably a little bit of a prisoner of the moment with how much I loved it and the fact that it was the first movie I've seen in 18 months in a theater, but I'm curious what everybody else thinks. So go check it out and let me know. So that's what we have for my favorite moment of the week. If you have anything that you would like to have discussed on my favorite moment of the week or have me check out, send it over to me. You can send it to me on any social media or send it directly, Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. And I will check it out, especially those fire TikToks. Send them. Send it. Let's go. All right. Now it's time for our next segment of the week.
It's time to Ask an Addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right, y'all. It is time to Ask an Addict. This is the part of the show where this addict, the resident addict of the Clean and Filthy podcast, answers questions submitted by our listeners and viewers. I like answering questions. A lot of people out there have questions. They don't all have to be recovery related. I love answering questions, period. This is like a Reddit AMA. Ask me anything. More than happy to talk about recovery stuff, but also regular non-recovery stuff. Send it over. So if you have any questions that you would like to have answered, possibly on air, send them over, as I just said, to any social media account. We will, we love getting questions, so please send them over. First question I had, and this was a tough one, was if I could only eat one cuisine for the rest of my life, what would it be? Now, of course, as we've done with every single question that has multiple options, I can't just give you an answer. Fuck no. Give an answer, a simple answer. Do you know me? Like, the fuck? Can't do that. So I got to ask some questions first. What are the health ramifications? Can I eat this one cuisine 3 times a day and still work on my fitness? Am I eating this cuisine 3 times a day and it's not going to give me heart disease? I'm not going to gain a bunch of weight and get diabetes? I need to know these things. So, of course, I had to break it down. If I could eat one thing and I had to eat it every single day, 3 times a day, it probably would be pizza. Probably would be pizza because there are different options you can do with pizza. You could do a barbecue chicken pizza. You could do a cheese pizza. You could do a thick crust, a thin crust, a deep dish Chicago, or a thin New Yorker. There's so many options, right? Plus, I love pizza. And if I could eat pizza 3 times a day and look like the fucking Rock, let's go. Send it. But if we have to think about healthier options here, things that maybe are going to be a little more balanced, I might vibe with some type of protein pasta, perchance. Something with a red sauce, something like that, because I love Italian food, and I can vibe with that most days. Another thing I thought is sushi. I love sushi, but I really think if I had to eat sushi for breakfast, Joe, that would, pizza for breakfast, gone. Let's do it. Sushi for breakfast, I don't know about that one. So probably not sushi. Another thing is steak, but that's kind of the same thing. I love steak, but there's only so many fillets that you can eat in a row before either your arteries are going to get plaqued shut, and I'm going to need to call my stepdad to get in there for some cardiac surgery, or, I don't know. I would love to say steak, but steak is just one of those things like, it's not realistic. And the same thing like with burgers. Again, if we were in the same vibe as the pizza where I can eat it and I'm still going to get in shape and I'm going to be looking like Channing Tatum and Magic Mike, then burgers would be a next option because there's so many things you can do with those. There's so many beautiful things that you can do with burgers. But I still think I would go pizza. So that is the answer. You did say one cuisine, but of course, me being how I am, I went, I digressed a bunch. So if I had to say one cuisine, I'd probably go Italian. It's incredible that I just really realized the fact that you said one cuisine, not one thing, after I just got done with that fucking monologue. Italian. There's your answer. God damn. I got to get better at reading, apparently.
That part.
Or reading better when it's 5 o'clock in the morning the night before and I'm adding questions to the script.
That part.
Next up, had a cool question. It says, what is my opinion of the best gaming chair? Now, I'm just going to say I use an Emerge Vartan. It was like $180 at Staples. And it's not that special. A lot of gaming chairs really aren't anything special. I don't know why there are so many brands that make gaming chairs when so many of them look the fucking same and do the same fucking thing. Really doesn't make sense to me. But if you want to go next level, you can get those gaming chairs that have like massagers or Bluetooth capabilities or speakers built in or RGB lighting or that recline. And when you start looking in crazy gaming chairs, there are some fire gaming chairs. Anything by Shin Smart or Imperator Works, yes. Go Google them. If you really want to look at something crazy that this addict would love to have, if I, had like Dan Bilzerian money, the Clovens, Clovens, Scorpion, the Predator Throne, or the Playseat Pro F1 simulator, custom branded in Mercedes AMG Petronas livery? Yo, that would be fire. But at the end of the day, the best gaming chair is what works for you. What works on your budget, what fits your butt properly, what cradles your thighs nicely, what holds your back supplely and seductively, what keeps your arms at a nice level, what helps with your posture, all that shit. Go sit in a bunch. Do the butt test. That's what I would suggest. For me personally, I found one that just so happened to be purple and just so happened to be moderately inexpensive and just so happened that it fit well on my long ass thighs. So that's what I did personally. But when I get that scorpion dough or that predator throne, whew, we going places on this podcast. Next question is, when did recovery click for you? You know, we talk about a lot about, recovery clicking, or there being this moment where recovery just starts working. That light bulb moment. And seeing that light bulb go on in the rooms is one of the greatest feelings in recovery for an addict like me. Watching somebody who struggles and struggles and struggles, and then one day it just goes boom. Absolutely indescribable how great that moment is. So what about my story? I can say that when I was at about between 10 and 14 days in treatment was when that first spiritual awakening happened, and I became at least slightly open-minded to become willing. That was probably that first moment for me. And that's when I first said, okay, I'll try this recovery shit for 6 months. And then it was probably somewhere around 3 months, especially kind of coinciding with going to my first convention, that I started to see recovery kind of as it could be some new way to live. And then around 9 months to a year, it truly became a new life for me. It was a new way of life. It no longer looked like something that could be. It no longer just looked like something that might be attractive. It was that thing for me. And that has to do with having a home group and having a sponsor and doing step work and going to meetings and being of service and developing that community around me. Being a part of the herd. Having my life rotating and revolving within recovery was very important for me, for my story, because I felt comfortable. I felt at home. I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. And since then, it's been a new way of life. It's continued to be a new way of life that continues to grow. And now the service work is changing, and the meetings are changing, and the opportunities to carry the message now include a fucking podcast. So for me, that initial opening up for the click was probably 10 to 14 days when I became open-minded to be willing. And then at about 3 months, a little after 3 months, I actually saw willingness being in my life. And then at about a year, I really, this was my shit, man. And for the last 2.5 years since then, it's just been progressing every single day. And I love that. I love that so much. I wouldn't change anything on my recovery journey because every single thing that's happened has helped me grow and my love for the program grow that much more. So it's pretty awesome. So that's what we have for our questions today. If you have any questions that you would like to have answered on the Clean and Filthy podcast, of course, please send them over to yours truly. We already talked about it multiple times, but we're going to say it one last time. Send them over to Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com or any of the social media, which is all listed on www.CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. So we are almost out of time, y'all. But we can't close up without giving them clean time shout-outs. This is the part of the show where we recognize various members with extended amounts of clean time in the program. These are the universally recognized milestones, which are a newcomer, which is anybody with 29 days or less, 30 days clean, 60 days clean, 90 days clean, 6 months clean, 9 months clean, 1 whole year clean, 18 months clean, or multiple years clean. But we also like to do it different here. we also like to give shout outs for them big numbers. So you hit triple digits, or you hit 500 days, or you hit 1,000 days, 10,000 days. We want to give you a shout out. And I love doing clean time shout outs. Love it, love it, love it. One of my favorite times in recovery, period, is clean time shout outs. Getting to celebrate and show that this way of life works. Get to see the miracle every single day. Love it. So if you have a clean time occurring between now and next Tuesday at 5 p.m. when we go live on air, make sure to send it over to me at any social media location. I'm not going to say them again because I've said them like 10 times this episode. So they're somewhere. They'll be at the end of the screen. Copy them down. Send them over. So let's get into this segment. Clean time shout-outs. First up with 100 days, triple digits official, my sponsee Vince. Well done, brother. Keep it up. And next with 18 months clean, we got Andy. You get a boop and a half. We do them boops for each year, y'all. And next with 18 months, we've got Claire, boop and a half. And then from Vegas, we got my man Big Mike with 3 years. Boop, boop, boop. Well done, well done, well done. And finally, with 12 years clean, he got that full dozen, baby. We got my man Reed with 12 years. Boop, 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 boop. There you go. Well done. Gonna be celebrating with you in a few hours here, my brother. So shout out to everybody who picked up clean time today. If you didn't, that's fine. Just don't use. And guess what? You will. And remember that every day clean is a successful day.
That part.
Also,
That part. That part. That part. That part.
I mean, it's true, though. It's just a fact. Well, y'all, we are officially just about out of time. But before we close up, I just want to tell everybody thank you all so very much. Thank you for being here with me for the last hour and 31 minutes and taking a part in my recovery. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for the continued support. Please keep sharing, commenting, subscribing, tweeting, retweeting, all that. New episodes every single Tuesday, 5 p.m. live on YouTube, downloadable on any podcast directory later. Huge thank you again to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. Huge thank you to our episode theme music, Anything by Valentino Khan and Alice in Wonderland. Shout out Mad Decent Records. And again, what I can't do alone, we can do together. We do recover, y'all. See you next week.
I just wanna feel it.